performative femininity basically shifts everything from what she needs. It's about what does he need. That's performative. And so I ignore what I need.
There was a number of expressions in this book that probably will continue to haunt me. One of them, you said, empty feminine packages. That women are encouraged to show up as empty feminine packages.
And blank slates.
You know, you raised some compelling questions about this ideal of the alpha male. You know, questioning whether or not it aligns with prophetic masculinity.
Yes.
Welcome to Beni Adam. Come on in. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Tell Me a Story. And before telling you what Tell Me a Story is, I want to give you a sense of the genesis of this idea. I would often sit down at the dinner table and my children would say, Dad, tell us a story. Now, sometimes I would tell them and sometimes I wouldn't tell them. But I started thinking about the centrality of stories to our experience. There's no perhaps greater evidence of the centrality of stories to our experience than the fact that the Quran is called Ahsan al-Qasas, the best of stories. So this is Tell Me a Story. It's a platform upon which we intend to elevate and highlight Muslim difference makers, and just help people connect with each other through stories. We want this to be a platform of connection, relatability, relevance, and a bit of intellectual intrigue. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, my guest is a prolific author. She's authored over 50 books, including short stories, novels. She writes on self-help. She has been an educational consultant for Macmillan Education. She lived in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, where she studied Arabic, Quran, tafsir for over 15 years. And currently, she teaches at the Zakiyyah or UZ Heart and Soul Care Community, where she offers a class called Feminine Soul Reset. She is Zakiyyah. She is my guest today. We are honored to have her at Beni Adam at the space. I'm going to hazard this.
Go ahead.
Because the reason I say I'm going to hazard this point is I realize that most of the harm done to women is done in the name of protecting them. But do you acknowledge that men do have a divinely ordained responsibility to protect the women in their lives?
Absolutely. You know, but controlling and protecting are two different things. And controlling and leading are two different things. Now, micromanaging and protecting are two different things.
Now, what would you say to someone that says, well, the difference between controlling and protecting is how you feel about what I'm saying? If you don't like what I'm saying, I'm controlling. If you do like what I'm saying, I'm protecting. But is that a fair criterion to differentiate between controlling and protecting?
In front of a law, no. In that man's head, I'm sure it does. But I would say that any sincere person who truly wants to protect someone is going to take into consideration not just what's convenient for him, not just what, you know, stokes his ego, but what is going to preserve and protect the emotional wellness, the psychology, the spiritual wellness of this person long term, even when I'm no longer here.
That's it. You know, I was talking to somebody about child rearing. Right? Women are not children. I want to make that
no.
clear.
I already get it. I use this analogy myself. Yeah.
And I was saying that, you know, my mother, love you, Mom, love you. And my mother wasn't an extremely heavy-handed person, but you know, if you stepped out of, you know, your spot, she would, you know, put you in it, right? And so Hadiya and I, we made the decision to stop hitting our children. This woman named Stacey Patton wrote a book called Spare the Child. And my mother would sometimes see my children, you know, taking certain liberties, and she would look at me, Will, whoop their ass, man. I was just,
look. It's your podcast.
Will, come on here, man. Now, my mother was not telling me to demoralize my children because she's too decent of a person to ever suggest that.
Okay.
right? She wasn't telling me demoralize them, destroy their self-confidence. She actually was, assuming that some kind of corporal rectification could take place without that happening. However, it is my job as their parent to know, no, if what I'm doing even runs the risk of demoralizing them, hurting their self-confidence, making them question my position of leadership in their lives, making them question my love for them, making them distrust me, then that, I love my mama, but that advice just cannot be taken.
Absolutely.
You understand?
I think that one of the mistakes that Muslims make today is we think every answer is going to be in a fatwa book or in a scholar's lecture.
Mm-hmm.
Life is in the nuance.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain baselines that we stick to, and there are certain lines we don't cross. In between, what is needed for one family is going to be different from what's needed for another, and the same thing with marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we sometimes are looking for that, well, what's the rule? This is they'll go, people will come and ask scholars about things that if we were taught enough to trust Allah and to trust ourselves, you wouldn't really need a scholar to tell you that, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and so that's why in my program Feminine So Reset, I emphasize getting up at night, talking to Allah. Even when you're making a decision, pray istikhara, because everybody, and istikhara is a prayer where if you don't, you're making a decision, you talk to Allah first. We're addicted to, I need the black and white proof, where black and white proofs are for foundational issues and for clear things, but the nuance of real life, even to the point where what's okay to do on Monday is not okay to do on Tuesday because of what's happening. And I think what's fundamentally wrong with a lot of these discussions, or even the lived experience, is that the man who's responsible, similar to the parent, quite frankly, is not looking at this woman, or many parents are not looking at their children, even though we already know women are not children, but we're using an analogy because of the station of a responsibility, as a full human being with very unique, complex needs that go beyond this moment.
Right.
And so, for example, if I go back to before I did my own healing journey and apologized to my daughter, and we began to do our own healing journey together, I was looking at her as someone I had the right to control, that my responsibility for her was mainly about what I thought. I wasn't necessarily considering how is she receiving this. If I read in a book, this is the right fiqh opinion, you doing it. And I started pulling back. I even started pulling back a bit when she was young, and I just said, you know what? You pray istikhara about this. Because I realized that it's not about me. It's about her and her journey. My job as a mother is not to make her decisions, it's to give her the tools to make her own decisions in the wisest way. But I need to draw boundaries in certain things as long as she's under my responsibility. But I don't need her to be a mirror image of me and all my fiqh opinions and all the way I think about life. She's not me.
Now look, my daughter's gonna hear this and say, Dad, that's why I like Chick-fil-A. I see you. Cool out, man.
Oh, okay, I don't know what that is.
Cool out. You gotta take some of my fiqh opinions.
What's up with Chick-fil-A?
Well, bismillah, we ain't gonna get in all that. We ain't gonna get in all that. But we ain't gonna get in all that. But what I will say, I'm only the Bihar guy. But my
I see. Okay.
Yeah, my daughter is a little different than I am in that.
I'm her fifth opinion. I'm not.
It's a little different than me in that regard. I'm just send a little shot to my daughter. Yeah. But what I'd like you to talk about a little bit is that there's somebody watching this interview. And they're thinking, women are talking about what they need, men are talking about what they need. When are we going to talk about harmony? بعضهم أولياء بعض. They're protective friends of one another. One of the most enjoyable parts of this book, because some parts were a little gut wrenching, because I had to sit in some confidence and okay, I don't have to be defensive about this. is that you say, look, performative femininity does not lead to a happy marriage. Performative femininity doesn't even lead to men being satisfied ultimately.
That's right.
Right? Rather, embodied femininity
Exactly.
leads to happiness. Embodied femininity leads to fulfillment. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, because you mentioned how we're talking about the man needs this, the woman needs this. When you're actually in harmony, both of your needs are getting met. So the needs are no longer a competition, they're complementary. And that's what we're talking about. And when we can respect the personage of the one in front of us and the individual life path that we're also sharing a significant portion together, then it's not a contradiction to the man needs this and the woman needs this. Performative femininity basically shifts everything from what she needs. It's about what does he need. That's performative. And so I ignore what I need. Like, for example, I gave an example in the book how many women, and I have many clients in this situation, there are women, and you all know who you are, may Allah help us all, and it's not blaming, it's not their fault. They have never experienced sexual, I don't know, can I just say it? Okay, orgasm. Ever. They don't even know what it is. But the man's done whatever he's got to do, right? So that's an example that's very common. And some of the women who have tried to go and research and learn what is this, the men will say this is inappropriate for you to study this type of stuff. So what is happening with a lot of women is that they're using their bodies as just kind of like a space for the man to do whatever he wants, but there's nothing for her.
You know, you use an expression that I actually read Ta-Nehisi Coates, his book The Message. Right? Are you from Baltimore?
No, I just lived there for a few years.
Okay. I think we were introduced in Baltimore.
That probably was the case.
But
I don't. Yeah.
Okay, we got a little Baltimore.
No. Yeah, I was there for a few years.
But he was just talking about the power of writing, and I think you would find a kindred soul in just a person that believes in the power of the written word. But he was talking about words that haunt you, expressions that haunt you, and this is kind of a testament to, I think, your skill as a writer. There was a number of expressions in this book that probably will continue to haunt me. One of them, you said, empty feminine packages. That women are encouraged to show up as empty feminine packages.
And blank slates.
Where did, like, take me into kind of the genesis of even like coming up with a term as evocative as that.
Well, for me, when I first thought of it, it wasn't for anyone else. It was like I didn't have the words because go back to how I almost left Islam. I was trying to find language for how I felt. And I was putting together all the pieces of what I learned directly or indirectly about what does it mean to be a good woman, what does it mean to be a righteous woman, and specifically, what do men want? And that's what I came up with. I was like, so because people will say, men, and I've been told this many times, men don't care about your intelligence, men don't care about your talents, men don't care about any sort of success, accomplishments that you had in life. Men care about two things: how you look and how you make them feel. And then another thing, and I put in one of the chapters, is there are three things a man wants in a marriage: good food, good sex, and quiet submission. If you give him that, he's good. So all of that stuff you coming with, nobody cares about. In fact, you are less likely to find a husband because he's going to be intimidated by you. He doesn't want to hear anything that's going to challenge him. He wants you to be quiet, get that food ready, and you know what else. You know what I'm saying?
there was actually a one vignette in the book where you referenced a popular mentor and life coach that you follow on social. And you said that he was announcing his engagement, and he was talking about how he knew the woman that he was marrying was the right one.
Yeah.
And then he talked a little bit about the wrong one. And it was actually her people pleasing that led him to the conclusion that this ain't it. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so basically what happened is that he had been engaged before, and this woman didn't like to say no to him. He didn't really realize that. He just thought they got along really well. And when everything came to a head was they were about to go on a trip. Well, they actually went on the trip, and he realized later that it was inconvenient for her, and she went ahead and did it anyway. And he was shocked. He was like, why didn't you say anything? But she was like, well, she didn't want to, basically displease him, is the long story short point. And he said now, I mean, of course, it was years later, he had met another woman. And one of the reasons that he knew that she was the one, because first of all, to give some context, he had a very specific mission in life where he wanted to coach people for certain things in their lives. And he knew that the type of work that he's doing and becoming multimillionaire or whatever it was, he couldn't get there except that he had a healthy, loving challenge next to him. He believed that. So that was his mindset. So when he realized that he had finally met a woman who was confident in who she was, who supported him, loved him, but would challenge him and say no sometimes, he knew he had found that person because she wasn't performing. She was existing who she was, and who she was made him a better person, made her a better person. And he was acknowledging that he could never reach the level of success that he wanted with a people-pleasing wife.
Mm-hmm. I think, there was a popular movement that began about, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago, actually. Some people refer to it as the manosphere. I don't.
Oh yeah, the red pill, please.
Red pill manosphere. Yeah. I'm not on social. I'm not really, into it, but I'm aware of it. And when a popular commentator talked about what men want, they want women that are fit, women that are feminine, and women that are submissive. Maybe when we say submissive, maybe this is where the disparity lies. Maybe when you hear submissive, you think without personality.
No.
What do you,
I don't have an issue with the word submissive.
But what do you think?
For me, the thing is that I think that this is way deeper than terminology. Because I was raised to respect and accept the leadership of a man, to surrender to that leadership, to submit to men. Now for someone else, they may have an issue with that. I don't have a problem with that. But the way I had understood it apparently was different from how many men understood it. That's where the discrepancy lies. Like for example, there was a brother who said to me that if you because my understanding is, let's say you're in charge of the family, you're trying to make a decision, and the wife is giving her opinion. The wife is like, look, I know you make the final decision, so I accept that. But she gets to give her feedback. But once you make the final decision, she accepts. That's, to me, that's submitting. But for him, he said, if you were truly a righteous woman, you wouldn't even have thoughts that disagree with your husband. Even if you submit to him in the end. Now, many men will not come out and say that verbally because, again, words, we get lost in words.
Yeah, I mean, many men wouldn't say that verbally because we don't want to look like idiots. We don't.
But they don't mind acting like them. So, okay, you can scratch that part out. Okay, but what it's like, for example, let's look at polygyny. For a lot of women whose husband have made that decision, instead of holding space for her complicated pain, he's trying to give fatwas to keep her from feeling what she's feeling. And so he's trying to control her emotional experience so he doesn't have to feel the discomfort of his decision. So now to him, submitting means, Allah allowed this. I don't want to hear anything from you. I don't want to see your stress. But to me, submitting means, look, if I stay with you, I'm going to still fulfill all of my duties, but I need you to hold me sometimes and let me cry over this. You get my point? So what happens is that most people in the lived experience, like the words that I use, for example, they would be like, oh my God. But if you unpack what they mean, so many people are living.
You know what? I was in California, and I was listening to something you recorded, and you were talking about polygyny. A man marrying more than one woman, and you said a man will say, but it's halal, it's Islamically permissible, and you said, what if your best friend married your ex-wife?
Exactly, and see
and
that
they looked at you and said, hey, come to iftar tonight. And you say, hey, and they say, hey man, look, it's halal. Hey, look, it's halal.
Exactly.
Say, hey, what would that mean for just how emotionally challenging something like, I mean, forget challenging, devastating, something like that would be, and our inability to hold space for women around issues like that in the name of submission?
I would say,
that's crazy.
I would say, I agree, it is crazy, but I would say it's not an inability. It's a lack of willingness to put in the work. Because what polygyny challenges men with, see, they're so used to, I can do it. But polygyny challenges, this is something that, for those who have chosen it, it challenges you to step up the work that you should have been doing in monogamy, which is the inner work on yourself. And when you have to deal with the emotions of two or more women, then you can't sustain that unless you do the inner work. You have to be able to sit in the discomfort of seeing the woman that you love in pain. You have to sit in the discomfort of, I did something that hurt her. Instead of putting that on her, I have to own that. And that is one of the things, when it is done correctly, I believe that that's one of the wisdoms behind it, because Allah is challenging this man. He has to learn how to deal with all of that. And he has to still go out and do his responsibility.
That's powerful. I mean, there's so much here. There's so much in this book.
Yeah,
there's so much to unpack. I do want to shift, because you focus on performative femininity, but you also address performative masculinity.
Yes.
You have a chapter that says he needs emotional safety too.
Yes.
And you quoted the popular writer Jason Wilson. So maybe talk about what it means for a man to be emotionally comfortable, and then maybe I can share some perspective there.
From my I try not to spend a whole bunch of time on men, because that's not my experience.
Sure.
But when I was speaking about it, I'll own it in that way. A man who is emotionally safe with a woman, he can put down the sword, so to speak. He can put down the guard and just be. He can be broken for a moment and know that she will hold space for that and build him back up. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we all, deep inside, we have the nafs, which is in by the nature of even the Arabic, is constantly a state of just surrender. That's very vulnerable. And the men have that too. You have, like what I talk about in Feminine Soul Reset, women have the XX, chromosome, which I give the analogy to the x-axis in math, where it's kind of like we get a double dose of that, but your foundational creation is on that x-axis, even though Allah gave you that y-axis too. And men tend to identify only with their y-axis, and this is my own analogy. And they're like, that's it, I'm the man. But what's holding you, what's at the heart, is that earth, that x-axis. And so a man who is emotionally safe, first of all, he needs to be emotionally safe with himself before he can be emotionally safe with a woman. And when he has a woman who's able to hold space for that, when he needs to be on that x-axis, he's good. But she will also nurture that y-axis, so that when he's ready to go back, it's there. That is emotional safety. You don't ever have to hold back what you want to share, because we all have parts of us that's just between us and us, or need to share. And also, you can go through a struggle and know you're going to come out fine.
Welcome to Beni Adam. I'm Ubaydullah Evans. We are a luxury consignment lounge in the Pilsen section of Chicago. We opened about a year ago, and our intention behind creating this space was to bring people together giving them an opportunity to trade things that they covet, trade things that are special to them, but also share some experience. So it's not just a retail location, it's more of a kind of a retail location and a lounge. So we're really excited about this space, and we invite everybody to, come in. Yeah, in that connection, you raise some compelling questions about this ideal of the alpha male. Questioning whether or not it aligns with prophetic masculinity.
Yes.
What is it that you take issue with? Just with the ideal, the term, the way it's treated in popular culture, alpha male. What is it about that just, I don't know, you bristle? You bristle.
For me, my concern, to be honest, if I'm being real, for me personally, I don't really care what people want to use. It's a word.
Sure.
But the reason I included it is that in the red pill manosphere community, which has become very, very...
Their community. Red pill manosphere community.
They are.
Subhanallah.
And it's becoming very widespread, is that it's used to justify mistreatment and abuse. That's the issue. That's the only thing. I don't mind the term, because I feel like when I first heard it years ago, I thought it was a good thing. But when I heard it out the mouths of men, it no longer was a good thing, because it was almost like, if we go back to the emotional safety, a man who, in the way it's used, it doesn't have to be used that way, because the conversation that I had with you, and I included that in the book, it made me think, okay, so there are some men who can use it with a bit more nuance, and may Allah bless you, you did, but I'd never heard a man speak of it like that before. Usually even the body language of a man, when he talks about being an alpha male, it's like,
it's aggressive.
Yeah, it's like, I'm an alpha. And so the term originally came from studying wolf behavior and stuff like that. And the issue that I have is not the term, it's how it's used. And it usually is not used in a context about, like, for example, if I were to take how I understood an alpha male before I heard that, and it was a good meaning. An alpha male, when he is talking about women, he would get together with other men to say, how do we step up to make these women feel safe?
Right.
How do we create safe spaces and be the leaders in that? And if we look at the things that are happening in the Muslim community, especially if it's like you are an underprivileged community, what can we do to create safer spaces? And another thing, alpha male, let's say, for example, there are certain types of women that he would never marry. He's not going to go on a podcast and talk about it.
Maybe.
Okay? He just chooses the woman he likes, and he goes on about his business, because an alpha male, who is in the good way, is creating safe spaces, and he chooses what he chooses. But to mock, shame, and put down other women, that's not an alpha male. That's somebody who is insecure, and he's self-emasculating.
See, when people reject that term, all I was saying was that I think they reject the term because there's an unhealthy kind of competitiveness, and it sounds hierarchical in a way that just doesn't resonate with most people. However, if you want to compel someone toward responsibility toward a person, it's like, how do we ground that responsibility? I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was reading this photojournalism book called Humans of New York. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yes, I'm familiar.
New York is an interesting place. But
yes, it is.
We're filming from Chicago.
Just so you know.
We're filming from Chicago. But it's called Humans of New York. And there was this interview with this middle-aged white guy, and he said, I'm a true feminist. That's how he began. Now, I know some women are deeply suspicious of any man who identifies as a feminist, but he says, I'm a true feminist, which means if we're on the A train and there's one seat, I'm going for it. So he was, that quote just stuck with me. He was saying, look, in the same way I don't feel any need to dominate you, I also don't feel any need to be kind to you. I see us as with complete parity. The term alpha male kind of, to me, implies something different than that. Because I do feel compelled to kindness toward my wife. If there's one seat, she can have it. With any woman, if there's one seat on the train, you can have it. because I feel like there's a greater responsibility I have to accept discomfort. And I was identifying that with this idea of like, how do you encourage men to that?
Yeah, for me, again, I like your explanation of it, and I mentioned that to you before, and I like your perspective of it. May Allah bless you. These are just words for me, and just to give you a background how I think about words, I'm not a fan of labels. I don't like it even amongst Muslims. Oh, I'm Sufi, I'm Salafi, I'm whatever. I don't care for that stuff. It's nothing wrong with it if people choose it, but I don't care for it. Why? Because it's a distraction from the root of the issue. Who am I to Allah? You can put whatever cover you want. And one of the examples I give in my classes is that, let's say I'm cooking and someone took the labels off of the cans and they switched them around and I'm following the recipe. It don't matter what that label says. If I put the wrong thing in, it ain't gonna come out the way I want.
That's right.
And so this is how I think about these terms. So I actually, some of those chapters, and specifically the alpha male, I mainly did that for the audience versus for myself. I'm suspicious of anyone who is married to a term.
Me too.
Yeah, because are you striving for that? Or is this who you are? If anyone says, even if a woman says, I'm a true feminist, and let's say they mean it in a good way, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
That's my first question. Or a man like, I'm a true alpha male. I'm like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
And why do you?
That's my children.
Yeah. So why do you have to say that, right? So for me, what you said, it tracks. It's as simple as that. I like that explanation. At the same time, we do have to acknowledge that what is spreading like a very, very bad disease is this idea that the alpha male is this dominant, I don't take any stuff, I don't show any weakness, and my woman submits. I remember watching a show, a piece of it anyway. It was a reality show. I don't remember what it was, but it was about like they were trying to get married or something. And the man comes in and they're just meeting these people. And the guy comes in saying, the first question he asks the woman to see if they're compatible is, are you willing to submit to me? And I thought this was absolutely wild. At the end of my book, I have a chapter called Who Will Catch Her When She Falls? And so what I talk about in this is there are these trust games that we have at these camps and stuff where you know how you fall backwards. Yeah. And so what I was making the analogy between how, let's say a fight broke out and the people who were supposed to fall backwards didn't want to do that, and the ones who wanted to catch them didn't want to be there. And I was making the analogy that the women have a falling backwards role and the men have a stand strong and catch role. And I asked the question, if there's a fight, who should stand up first to assume their position? And the one who needs to assume their position to block any sort of injury or harm is the man. So, because if he stands there, worst case scenario, if she doesn't fall into his arms, he's standing there doing what he was supposed to do and he's not harmed. But if you ask a woman to fall backwards first and take the chance there's nobody there to catch her, you asking her to break her back.
You know, this gives us an opportunity to kind of move into something a bit more personal. You know, for me, listening to you, you know, because my wife is one of your students. And she takes Feminist Soul Reset. That's how I was, kind of introduced to this aspect of your work. And she listens to different speakers and teachers, and I work as a teacher. So when I'm at home, last thing I want to do is hear different teachers. I'm sorry. I'm just,
no, it's a lot. I don't blame you.
It's kind of like I'm inundated. I'm in that world.
I get it.
So for me, it's all just like, okay, mashallah, I'm just glad she's benefiting. But I'm not like myself. Like I have my teachers that I read with, but I'm not like as active as somebody else might be in terms of like listening and So, but you were talking about qawwama. Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa. Men are the maintainers and protectors of women. And she challenged me to meet with you. Right? 'Cause it was something she wanted me to learn. She said, "Would you meet with her?" And now, anybody who knows me, I don't run from no challenge. I don't run from no. Yeah, I'll meet with her. And when you started talking about, but Kawama is more than just physically, protecting and financially providing.
Yeah.
How are you protecting your family and your wife emotionally?
Exactly.
And do you recognize that she has distinct needs that might be different than your own? I had never considered that.
Yeah.
I had never considered that. And so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for listening and applying it, alhamdulillah.
Sure. And it forced me to think of my role in a more expansive way. Now, I don't always get it right. I mean,
nobody does.
Yeah. But to even think about the way that I say things, my tone, whether or not she feels comfortable expressing her exasperation, her frustration, can I and here's the thing, you have to have strength to do that. I encourage people to read this book. I encourage people to read this book.
Yeah. Show them the book when you say it.
See, you do a little.
No. I'm saying so that I was helping them with the editing.
You do a little direct. You writer, novel, short stories, self-help, teacher, film director. But do you feel safe with him? This book challenged me in many ways, but these were excellent challenges.
Yeah.
Just thinking about if I was like sending my wife all kind of loving texts after I said, oh man, I said, but this book just on a visceral level just wants me to just forces me to ask, do you feel it? Are you? I love you, right?
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad.
But I encourage my brothers to pick this up. I encourage my sisters to pick this up. I have 2 daughters and a son, and making sure that we cultivate and foster a culture in which everybody can be authentic and grow in their relationship with God in that way, and not performative. You've given us, yet another tool that will help us in that direction.
Alhamdulillah.
So,
thank
God
you.
bless you.
Yeah,
thank you for coming on. It's been wonderful to talk with you. If you want to tell me a story, you can find me at tellmeastorymedia@gmail.com. Today, I've had the honor and the privilege of conversing with Zakiyyah, prolific author, teacher. She's creating, I think, a very, very interesting lane for men and women to, I think, find deeper understandings of what it means to be emotionally safe for each other and emotionally safe for ourselves. So check this book out when you get a chance.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I really enjoyed it, and I'm humbled and honored to be a part of this conversation. And thank you for reading the book. As I told you before, the fact that you opened to the first page after you saw the cover, I was like, lots of points there. May Allah bless you. But for those of you who are wondering where you can get the book now it's available for pre-order. This is the book. It's one of my babies. Yay! Okay, and it's available on Amazon for pre-order right now and other places. And it'll be coming out August 30th, this year, 2025. And if you're interested in Feminine Soul Reset, just go to sqsoul.com and you can join there. And if you're interested in contacting me, just write me at uzi@uziauthor.com and I'll be happy to respond.